Hey there, it's Tom Ryan, founder and CEO of ICR. Before we get into the next episode, I wanted to ask that you subscribe to the show. It'll help us get even more unique and interesting guests on the podcast and in turn continue to educate management teams and the growing ecosystem that creates value for fast-growing private and public companies. And while you're at it, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating. Very much appreciated.
The guys on the East Coast were like, you mean I don't have to wear that animal logo on my chest anymore? And the guys on the West Coast were like, I can actually put on a collared shirt and I still feel like I'm close to home.
When John O'Donnell founded Johnnie-O in 2005, his goal was to create a brand that melded East Coast prep and West Coast surf culture. 20 years later, you'll find their iconic surfer logo in any one of their 16 freestanding retail locations, as well as golf pro shops and menswear stores across the country.
When I really said, wow, we got something going here, is when I'd walk into different fine men's retail stores that are very respected and been in business for a long time that have Johnnie-O front and center in their store for consumers to see when they walk in.
My name is Tom Ryan, and this is Welcome to the Arena, the ICR podcast. Each week, I sit down with today's business leaders to give you an inside scoop on some of America's most prosperous public companies, their origins, their challenges, and the keys to their success. Today, we're sitting down with John O'Donnell, founder of Johnnie-O, the branded lifestyle apparel company that we've all come to know and love. John was born in St. Louis, Missouri, raised in the suburbs of Chicago, and after graduating from UCLA, he spent 10 years selling radio and television advertising in Madison and Chicago. He returned to LA in 1997 and took a job with the Golf Channel. Then in 2005, he launched Johnnie-O, and it's since grown into an incredible brand and a great American success story. Let's enter the arena with John O'Donnell. What did you see in the marketplace in 2005 that you saw, wow, there's like an opportunity for something new here?
Yeah, it wasn't so much I saw an apparel thing. Clothing just happened to be the vehicle. I've never been a clothing guy, but I've grown into one somewhat. I grew up in Winnetka, the mean streets of Winnetka, which is a suburb north of Chicago.
Yep.
And it is a very preppy, blue blazers, khaki pants, and penny loafers. And then, all my friends, most of them went to school in the Midwest, college and the East Coast and Georgetown and Boston College and things like that. So I had my fair share of penny loafers. And when guys graduated business school, of course, I got into the Belgian loafers.
The pleated khakis in front.
The blazers and khakis, of course. And then, I went out to UCLA for college, but then went back, as you said. But came back in 97, was continuing my career in media sales. And I took notice of the different cultures.
Yep.
And one of those differences was what people were wearing. I thought, wow, you either have to live in the world of prep or you had to kind of fall in line with this LA kind of cooler, hipper, a lot of black jeans and black t-shirts and things of that nature. And I just didn't know where it fit. And it just dawned on me, like, why isn't there something that's kind of in between? And I have a buddy who's got a house down in Florida. He uses for photo shoots, and he was making up some t-shirts and hats, and it had a surfboard on it, surf logo of sorts. And I said, you know what? There needs to be a Southern California version of Polo Ralph Lauren.
Yeah.
Now, I know we are nowhere close to what Polo is, but I admired what they've always done. And I said to myself, what would that look like? And I said, well, the first thing is you'd have to come up with the logo. And, what better for Southern California than a guy with his surfboard? And so I saw a picture of a photo in a restaurant. It was a black and white photo of a guy standing next to his board. And I said, that's it.
Yeah.
And I snapped a photo of it, sent it to my brother-in-law. I said, sketch this thing out. He sketched out the logo. But I took that surf logo, and instead of putting it on baggies and surf shorts and yada, yada, I started to put it on polo shirts and button-down shirts and things that you might find more in the Midwest or the East Coast. And so I think there was this explosion, this marriage of two worlds, and people on both sides were intrigued. The guys on the East Coast were like, you mean I don't have to wear that animal logo on my chest anymore? And
Yep.
The guys on the West Coast were like, I can actually put on a collared shirt and I still feel like I'm close to home. So it was kind of some dumb luck, and we just kept going with it.
Yeah, but the best ideas are so simple. It's just kind of like, hey, we need a combination here. But
yeah.
So given that you're kind of drawing on that East Coast, West Coast, like for you personally, how do you think your connection and roots in the Midwest come out through the brand?
Well, it's a good question. And I learned from my dad. He was in radio. He had a radio station, and
Yeah.
it was a light FM music station. I use this analogy all the time, and it was playing the light favorites.
Pre-yacht rock.
Yeah, it was a lot of that. And I said, Dad, can we throw in some Rolling Stones or something? And I'll never forget, he said, you can't be everything to everybody. So you have to be careful not to do that. So we try to not lean too far in one way. But growing up in the Midwest, I was exposed to what would have been considered a preppy environment.
Yeah.
And so that gave me the part of the recipe with it was the preppy part. And then it was up to me to try to learn a little bit more about the West Coast California look. I think we still lean a little more on the conservative nature, but our logo kind of gives us a lot of that kick and a lot of that punch for Southern California cool.
Totally. Now, you went to UCLA, you're on the golf team, so you're a pretty well-known golfer in the LA area when you started the brand.
Well, first of all, I want to clarify to all those UCLA Golf team alums. I was a 1-year walk-on.
You made it, though.
You know what? I did, and it was a thrill. I've always played a lot of golf competitively and in tournaments. I've been fortunate to play in a lot of clubs.
Yep.
Been invited to a lot of places, traveled around and met a lot of people. And then, wouldn't you know, my last job in media sales was with the Golf Channel.
There you go.
So it just entrenched me even more into the golf community. So when I started the company, I started with the polo shirt. And people said, oh, Johnnie-O, I see you're starting a golf brand. And I said, well, it's not exactly supposed to be a golf brand, but the low-hanging fruit for me was the people in these pro shop, these pros that I knew from spending time with them. And those were the ones that really kind of gave me the shot early.
The marketplace is crowded. Everybody knows that. Is the brand itself and that vibe your differentiation? How else do you approach it?
Trying to differentiate yourself in this marketplace is tough.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate to say that I've got people around me that are a lot smarter than me. And so they've got a pretty good gauge on what the market's doing, but we still have to try to differentiate. We still have to try to innovate. And we've got top guys, Chris Knott, Marcus, they're just big time talents in this world of design and merchandising. And so I lean on them a lot. I still try to get my 2 cents in. Differentiating is difficult, but I think we do a great job of it. And I think we've built a nice, it sounds corny, but there is a certain family or club aspect to Johnnie-O, and people like to be a part of it. And I think we're providing them, at least it seems to be year after year with our growth, clothes that work for them.
Yeah, completely agree. It's very comfortable to connect with the brand.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? It's not like, I don't want to trash anybody, but like when I grew up, I'm 61 years old. My mom had me wearing like a Lacoste thing,
Oh, yeah.
And like, that just was like so French and like, am I Jimmy Connors? Like, you know.
We used to call them our alligator shirts.
Yeah, exactly, right?
When it was time to go to church, Mom would say, put on your alligator shirt. And I'm hearing it more and more, Tom. It's funny you say that. Kids ask your mom, Dad, what do I wear? Well, put on a pair of pants and a Johnnie-O. So that always makes me feel good to hear that.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
You talked about the evolution of the company, but I'd love to know the very beginning, like what was the first 2 years like? Probably like chaos and struggle and insecurity and everything, right?
All the above, and none of that's gone. That's
there you go.
It still remains.
Yeah.
But it was literally, I had a 2-bedroom condo, and my second bedroom became this office, and I was just deluged in paper and stuff. I mean, I started off buying my polos from a wholesaler and taking them to a embroidery shop in downtown LA and getting them hit with the logo, and found a place that could make a label, and they stitched the label in, and it was a 3-stop shop for 120 pieces that I was hoping I could sell. And it was really out of my second bedroom. And then I just started to cobble it together with people. And then my savior, Katie Daly Benjamin, appeared, and she's our current COO and has been with us for 18 years or something. And, we wouldn't be here without her. So I was able to lean on her to do all that, I guess what was considered work for me, but the paperwork, and I could just go out and get the product into people's hands.
So for people who may not know, maybe talk about distribution. Like, how do you balance your business between wholesale, e-commerce, retail, all that stuff? It just seems so complex managing and balancing those channels.
It is the different channels, and, all of them feed off each other. You've got the wholesale channel consisting of green grass, which are the golf shops, and then specialty, which would be off-course men's shops. And then you've got e-commerce. We've got our corporate, which has become a monster for us with our new NFL license, Major League Baseball, NHL, our NCAA, and they all feed off each other. And we've got department heads for each that are kind of running their business. And the synergies, they work. They work. You might see some different products in the corporate department than you will, say, for some of our fine men retailers, but everyone knows what the goal is and works together, and the production and design team provides the product to make it that much easier for them to go out and sell it.
At what moment in your mind, and maybe you're not even there yet, did you say, like, we broke through, like something happened where we broke through? Like, what do you think happened?
I think the momentum just continued.
Like from the beginning?
From the beginning. And I'm not very smart, but I was smart enough to know when people are buying it, meaning they're buying into what you got, or if they're just being nice. And there's a difference. And I've been in sales my whole life, and I know when, the fish are biting, or when they're just giving you a pat on the head and say, I'll buy a shirt, see you next year. And so I always felt like it had a chance. I think when I really felt like we made it, I'll tell you this funny story, but it meant something to me. This woman sent me an email probably 4 years into the business, and she said, I had to share this with you. I lay my clothes out for my 6-year-old son every night, and he'll wear nothing but Johnnie-O. And the night I had to lay his clothes out, I saw that his Johnnie-O's were soiled, so I put out a different shirt. And he came down the next morning, and he looked at me mad as hell, and he said, Mommy, why is there a horse on my Johnnie-O?
No.
Yeah. And I thought, okay, we're making bear tracks here.
You're doing something.
Yeah.
What was the marketing like in the first 5 years? And when did something happen where you thought, hey, like now we're professionally marketing this thing?
Well, the marketing, we didn't have social media when I started in 2005. Social media to me, I was using the word, I swear to God, influencers back in 2005, because the way I was getting the product out there was I was doing in-home trunk shows.
Yeah.
And I was doing trunk shows at holiday boutiques at grade schools. But I was able to kind of pick my consumer base. So I would target friends that had the social influencers within their community. And I said, if I can get these people wearing the product, then maybe it'll trickle down to their friends and so on and so forth. But I think is when I really said, wow, we got something going here, is when I'd walk into different great fine men's retail stores that are very respected and been in business for a long time, that have Johnnie-O front and center in their store for consumers to see when they walk in, golf shops. When the website, we really started to take off and incoming orders. I used to write a personal note to every incoming order online. And it would be like, hey, Joe, thanks for the business. I see you're in Alabama, Roll Tide, and I tried to make a connection with every consumer, and it was fun.
Yeah.
Until I started getting 50 orders a day and then 100 orders a day. And I finally tapped out. I said, I can't do it anymore. And that's when I thought, okay, well, here we go. And Tom, it's knock on wood, it just hasn't stopped.
Yeah. And so you talked about influencers. I know your brother's the actor Chris O'Donnell, and people would know him from the Three Musketeers and Batman and all the stuff he's done. Does he try and take credit for the success? Did you pop a Johnnie-O on him and he was out there needling you on that?
Of course. I'd say, come on, man, you're going to be on Letterman. Can you put on a Johnnie-O hat? But it's a little early in our career. But Chris has been great and has been very supportive. It's funny, though, because his last show he did, the NCIS LA, it was really hard to get him to wear anything. And I totally understood, because he and LL Cool J, all they wore were, gray jeans and black T-shirts.
Yeah.
And we didn't really specialize in that. So I said, okay, you're off the hook.
A few times now, John's mentioned the consistent growth they've experienced since founding Johnnie-O 20 years ago. But as a private company, it's tough to get specifics about the scale of that growth and the type of revenue we're talking about here. I asked John if he'd be willing to give us a bit of a peek behind the curtain.
It's funny, our chairman, who happens to be one of my brother-in-laws, Rob Berner, when we started out, and we were doubling every year. And, from 60,000 to 120 to 240 to $500,000 to $1 million. And suddenly I said, looked at him, I said, well, doubling every year, that's going to be a tough clip. But we continued to have dramatic growth rates, and we still do. We're consistently a minimum 20% growth rate year over year. Couple of years, COVID, and coming out of that, we dipped a little, but nothing dramatic. And we continue to have these 20% growth rates year over year. And, we're closing in. We're right at around $200 million in revenue. Proud to share that a lot of people have their secrets, but it's, revenue that goes beyond just the dollars. It's just that we're getting more people into the Johnnie-O family and the Johnnie-O club, as I call it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I started ICR in 1998, and I don't even think of, it's great to grow and all that. I look at growth more because it creates opportunity for everybody who works here. You can make more money, you can move up the ladder, you can hire more people, you can change people's lives, and you're helping solve more. At least in our case, you're helping, people solve their problems or help them get better at what they do. And it's kind of that same feeling like after you get to a certain point, it's not about money or any of that. It's about like, hey, I've created this cool thing. Like, let's get it to everybody,
Yeah. And we've been disciplined in not trying to become the big guy on the block overnight.
Yeah.
And it's served us well. We've always had a conservative approach to, what we're spending against and making sure that we, quite frankly, you don't run out of money. That's how you go out of business. So
you are smart, John.
Yeah. How's that for a wizard?
Yeah.
But we've had about, 7 rounds of fundraising. The first 4 or 5 were friends and family. In the last few years, we brought in a couple what I'd consider professional investors, and they've been great to work with. And I leave that part of the business up to our chairman and our CEO, Dave Gatto, who are, let's just say, I'm in good hands.
Good. It's a very comfortable place to be.
It is. It is.
How hard is it to break into the women's business with the Johnnie-O logo and all of that? Has that been tough? Because the vibe and the style, I think, has a place with women too, right?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, for sure. And we just, as you may have known, we just launched women's. I guess it's been about 18 months now. Maybe it's been a little longer. But we were back and forth on whether I actually did women's when I first started.
Oh, no kidding.
I made some polo shirts, some T-shirts, and some what I thought was some really cute stuff. And the girls loved it.
Yeah.
But we got to a point where we had so much momentum with the men's and the boys.
The other stuff just took off, right?
It did. And we had to kind of pick our lane. And women's can be a tougher business, but we finally decided it was just, they were demanding it. And we finally said, let's go. And we came, again, conservatively. We didn't come out of the box trying to be the hottest women's line. We made pieces. They weren't necessarily huge collections. We weren't walking the runways necessarily. And as a result, we've had very good response, and the women's business is flourishing.
What are other growth avenues, whether it's geographically, global, all that stuff? How do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, again, that's high-level stuff. But, you talk about international, what are the opportunities internationally? Caitlin was asking me earlier, how many freestanding Johnnie-O stores do we have? I think we're up to about 16. But if you look at some of the people in our space, they might have upwards of 60, 80 to 100 to 150 stores. So, that's something that our team will continue to look at. Lord knows the website e-com is, that's, what do you got, 380 million shoppers. That's just remains to be the biggest opportunity, I think, because there are not many golf shops left that we're not in and men's stores that we're not in. We've got very, very good coverage there. We're always talking about different avenues to bring in more people to the party.
Yeah. What happened in April of this year when tariffs were announced? Was that terrifying to you guys?
That's a good question. Yeah. I wasn't deep into it, but I can top line it with, we've done very well, relatively speaking. Our partners have been amazing, the factories and so on and so forth. Our team's been working really hard operationally. We actually started to do less and less product in China. I know we've done a lot of our footwear in China, but we didn't have too much exposure there. But when you get into India and Vietnam, I know that we were having some pain points there. But we've really, the team, I say we, but they really have done it, the heavy lifting, have done a great job. And we're going to feel it for sure in our profit this year. But it is, again, because I think we've had this mindset of always working conservatively, and we're not worried about anything.
I think the slow and steady wins the race thing is just so gigantic. You can have, you're lucky you have good professional investors, whoever they are, but, they could come in and maybe you're off in a different part of the company doing different things strategically. And then all of a sudden you feel things change a little bit, and like, hey, what are we doing here? Are we trying to grind for another point of margin, or are we trying to sacrifice customer service? You know what I'm saying? That just wouldn't work for you guys.
Admittedly, I don't deal much with our partners, but I know exactly what you're talking about because I talk to Rob all the time about it. And we've got great institutional partners that I think have a lot of trust in our team and what we're doing. And again, it's hard to argue with consistent 20% year-over-year growth. And I think that we've stayed true to our culture and our look and our brand and our voice. And we haven't made any logo changes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So,
Don't do that. God, we know how that ends up.
oh, God.
So we're sitting here kind of like in September of 2025. When you look out to 2026, what one or two things have you most fired up about the business and what you might be able to accomplish or change or strategically move forward?
Oh, God, that's a good question, Tom. I think a few more key store sites that I think could be really interesting for us. There's still some hot spots that we haven't hit. Our corporate business, I think, is interesting. The new NFL license we just kicked off. It's been unbelievable. It's gone absolutely haywire. Our embroidery department is not happy. But I think that, really getting into, and we've gotten, some new people leading our marketing efforts, and we're really starting to get more involved with the social media. We were never really that good at social media. And, it's kind of that thing you have to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big social media guy, so sometimes I see some of it and I kind of like, oh, geez, is that really us? But you know what? They know what they're doing. And, I hear from the marketing team, we need more top of funnel. And that's what this social media thing is all about. It's getting more eyeballs and people familiar with Johnnie-O.
What will the Johnnie-O line never include?
I don't think we'll ever include I can't even remember what you call the pants that guys wear. And I got nothing against them, but when they hook at the bottom of your ankle.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever do those. And if we do, I'm not buying. I just don't think that's our look. So
that might be like the jump the shark moment in Happy Days, right? Like as soon as that comes out.
Yeah, we'll call the pants the Fonzies. But I don't think we'll see those.
Yeah. And what concerns you most right now? Like, are you guys using technology and AI? And like, is it just the competitive landscape?
I think it's the competitive landscape. We've never, you pay attention to what people are doing, but we've never approached this business with our fists up. It's always just kind of been like, we've got our story, we've got our plan, and we go. And we have competitors that they come after us and we hear about it, whether it's with factories or certain shops. And it's like, hey, have at it. But I think what worries me is technology is interesting, and is the wrong messaging being delivered or at a certain time? How do we keep the business interesting? How do we keep the product evolving? How do we continue to appeal to the 4-year-old boy like we do all the way up to the 84-year-old grandfather?
Yeah.
And that's not easy. Again, not being everything to everybody, but I look at it as kind of a party we're having here, and it's a fun party and everyone's included.
Yeah. How about just for you personally in your career, having been at this for 20 years, what are one or two lessons that you've learned along the way? Sure, you have a lot of battle scars to prove it, but what do you think?
It's true. Well, speaking to younger people out there, and I think it's relevant because the job market for people just out of college is so brutal right now. But I spoke at a high school once and I was asked that question. And what immediately came to mind was, for all you youngsters out there getting out of college with your degree in X, Y, or Z, don't feel like you have to pigeonhole yourself into, well, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be in real estate. Open up your mind and your eyes to what might be other industries or something you never dreamed that you'd ever be a part of. But if you see opportunity is what it's all about. I think it should be less about looking at an industry and look more at where the opportunity is. And if the opportunity is to make better widgets, then go out and find a way to make better widgets. And I would also say slow and steady, as you said. And we pride ourselves on being consistent and hopefully delivering what our customers want. And then my other piece of advice is hire people that are smarter than you. And I've been extremely fortunate with that. And I was never intimidated with anybody smarter than me, because most people are. And bring in the horses, man. And I've been lucky. So it's been fun.
That was John O'Donnell, founder of Johnnie-O. John and the team have built such a comfortable brand to connect with. And by taking that slow and steady approach, not trying to be too much to too many people, they've managed to foster incredible brand loyalty among their customers, leading to some really impressive and consistent growth. I look forward to seeing Johnnie-O continue to grow, and I'm sure we'll see that surfer logo pop up in even more shops and high-end stores in the future. I'm Tom Ryan. We'll see you next time back in the arena.
References to specific stocks are not intended to be recommendations for specific trading behavior. Comments presented on this podcast are intended for informational and educational purposes only, and do not represent opinions or recommendations on whether to buy, sell, or hold shares of a particular stock. All investors are advised to conduct their own independent research into individual stocks before making a trading decision. In addition, investors are advised that past stock performance is no guarantee of future price performance.